Hello, my name is Fred Trotter, and I'm going to be listing some tools that I think are very useful if you are going to be protecting data on specifically an OSX machine, which is the type of machine I typically use. Most of these technologies will also work on either Windows or Linux. I have not figured out how to do this on Chromebook yet, but I would like to. Chromebook is a more secure operating system, but I wanted people to know how to do it at least on these operating systems. So if you're going to use to try to encrypt files on a computer, I think the easiest way to do it, to make the file something you can move between computers and easily back up to the cloud, is going to be an encrypted zip file. Now, the trouble with zip files is that there's two generations of encryption with zip files, and the latest version uses AES 256, which is a relatively reliable and secure encryption algorithm that's approved by NIST. And before that was the encryption standard, there was something called legacy encryption. And unfortunately, you kind of have to pay attention to whether or not you're creating the right version of a zip file. I like to use 7-zip, 7Z for encryption. Because it kind of by default uses the later version of encryption and is a little bit better encryption. And the easiest tool to do that on a Macintosh is called keka, kekaosx.com here. So you go here and you download keka and you install it, and then you'll have a little icon here called keka. When you first open it up, it's going to give you two windows, including this one with the compression. You want to choose the default format of 7Z rather than zip. So 7Z is a later version of the zip file standard. And you can choose zip, but if you choose zip, unfortunately, it uses the wrong encryption version. So if you choose 7-zip, you're getting the right encryption. I prefer the slowest and more compressed files, because even the slowest compression is really fast on modern computers and doesn't take any time. All the rest of the defaults I leave the same. So using it is pretty easy. All you have to do is go to your file directory, and I have a plain text file that I've got in a zip demo, and then you just take this and you drag it over to the little icon for Keka and drop it, and there it makes the plain text zip file 7Z created there. Let me go back and show you how you make sure that there's encrypted. So if you have 7Z here, you type your password here. Without a password, it won't encrypt it. You need to have a password. So I'm going to type Bob as my short, tiny password here. You want to choose encrypt file names here. And once you've done this, now the same action will result in an encrypted file. So that's wonderful. Now if I go to open it, it's going to ask for the password, and I say Bob, and it'll automatically rename the text file. Now I've made this text file pretty simple. It's just got a little text that says, this is something I want to protect. You can use image files or video files. You can put whatever you want into it. It's just like a regular zip file. But you want to make sure that you can create the zip file and then unzip it, and then you have the same information in both the outputted files as the original. And so you want to test this a little bit. So once you have this plain text, this encrypted file, then you want to back it up. And there's a couple of different backup solutions that I think are reasonable. One is box.com. And I think they have a little bit of focus on HIPAA security, or did at least at one time. Dropbox is fine too. I think they're yet another fine organization. And then Google Drive is probably also okay. So I recommend that you only keep the encrypted files inside your cloud backup solution. And don't ever upload the unencrypted files. And so by having the encrypted files, despite the fact that you're sharing it with a cloud resource, you're protecting the confidentiality of the file. And of course, the classic thing for remembering what you want to do to protect files is CIA, which stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And you're using keka to get the confidentiality by encrypting the file, encrypting it, and then encrypting it, unencrypting it, and making sure that you get the same result on both when you have the original and then when you have the you've decrypted it again. That's how you're verifying the integrity of your encryption, which is to say that the encryption is not destroying the contents of the file or anything else. And then the availability, the A in CIA, is you use a cloud provider to make sure that you always have access to the files. So once they are encrypted, they are safe to put in the cloud, and then you have CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Those are the basics. So again, I'm going to continue with the things that I think someone who is kind of taking responsibility potentially for other people's security need to know. And for that purpose, I like PWsafe. PWsafe actually was originally a Windows application. And I think if you Google for PWsafe, you get this is the Windows version, which looks like this. And the nice thing about PWsafe is that it's storing. LastPass is pretty good. I think they've got a pretty good reputation in the industry, but you are trusting a centrally located vendor who kind of maintains the backup of your file for you. I think that's perfectly good enough if you're just trying to protect yourself. In fact, I think just using your browser security cache is probably adequate when you're just talking about protecting yourself. But when you use your browser security settings or when you use LastPass, you are trusting in Mozilla or Firefox or somebody else to have the centrally, the central hub of your passwords. And if you're responsible for other people's data, you can't afford the possibility that a breach will impact more than you. So as trustworthy as LastPass and Google and Safari or Apple and Mozilla all are, you should use an application like PWsafe. PWsafe has a pretty sterling reputation in the security industry, and there is a Mac version at pwsafe.info, which is what I use. And then what I do is take this will generate essentially another encrypted file, but inside that encrypted file it's all of your passwords, and it has a pretty good system for managing passwords. I do not use the browser plugins. There's apparently browser plugins that you can use to make it work with your browser really quickly and easily. I think those are probably fine. I just don't happen to use them, so I really don't know much about them. So use a password manager, and there's a wonderful cartoon about passphrases from XKCD, which I'm going to briefly show you just so you can see this. It looks like this, as Troubadour number 3 up here on the for the example. And this is XKCD 936. You can search for this for passphrase or XKCD password strength and get here too. This talks about what a what a passphrase is and the reason why it's a better idea to use a passphrase. It's a great summary. So what I recommend is you use PWsafe, which means you have a little program that runs, and let me see if I've got it open yet. I haven't installed anything, so that's good because it means I can just show. Okay, Mac, new safe. So here I say, for instance, going back to the classic XKCD example, correct horse battery stable. I type correct horse battery stable, correct horse battery stable. Right, okay. So that will be my new new thing. And then here what I do is I have a new entry, and let's say I've got a Facebook password or a Twitter password. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the settings here and see if I can, no. if there's a way to set my preferences for this to auto-generate passwords, no. To essentially, well, I'll make it easy. Do this new password functionality here. And then if you want a new password, so first of all, down here you see this little lock. This will unlock an entry, so I can't edit it unless this is unlocked. And if I click this, the sunglasses, it shows it or doesn't show it. So here I've got it unlocked and seen. I can do a new password, and I can merge it with another password, and I can make very long and complicated passwords here by just kind of continuing to extend this. So that's a wonderfully huge long password that I could use for Twitter. And what I'm using to get into PWsafe is a nice passphrase that I can remember. And the password that I'm getting out of it is a super good, super long password that is extremely difficult to remember and many characters long. So that's a great way to do that. But once I'm done with this, I can have I can export my passwords, and then I can put them into safely. I can put them into the cloud the same way I was suggesting you do with something else. So that's how you use a password manager, and that's how you use zip files to do encryption, all in one not too terribly long video. I hope you found this helpful.